So AI Inference Proxy. So first of all, I'm just going to give a little background on what it is. So issue is we wanted to play, and when I say we, see RGV Cyber, wanted to play with AI. AI is freaking expensive. Token costs for like things like Claude, things like OpenAI, just not affordable for a small nonprofit when you have like no budget. Yeah, I can get the $20 a month account and I can use Claude to do stuff. That's great. But I want to be able to do stuff outside of Claude Code. I want to be able to do stuff outside of the chat bots. I want to write my own code, have it run against my own API and do stuff with it. So what's the solution for that? Well, local AI. Cool, I can do that. You know, I got some hardware. I got a 3080 at home. I can spin up a model. For any of you who've tried to spin up a decent model on a 3080, it works like crap. The model itself that you can actually run within 12 gig of RAM is not that great. You ask it questions and eventually it might give you an answer. Might not be the answer you asked for, but it's just not great. So what do I need? I need something where I can actually run a real model. I could invest in a high-end video card. I could. I'm not making that much money that I can just, you know, whip out $2,000. I could buy a Mac Mini Pro. Again, it's a $2,000 down payment on something that I don't even know that it's going to work. And the other thing too is even with your 5090s, your Mac Mini Pros, that type of stuff, you're still limited in how much video RAM they actually have. When you're looking at models like that, what Anthropic runs and OpenAI run, those things are running on like $10,000 video cards with a ton of VRAM on it. That's how they get the performance out of it. You're not going to make that happen on a Mac Mini. The other thing is low utilization. I'm not running AI 24/7 at home. I don't need to buy a $2,000 machine that's going to sit on my desk and only be used for like 2 hours a day. So what's the solution here? So for me, solution was there's a service called RunPod. What they do is they essentially rent out GPUs. So you connect it up to them, and it's kind of, think of it like an AWS thing. You select, hey, what GPU do you want? How much storage do you need? And you hit a button and it spins up a machine with that GPU running. You can then configure which models you want to be loaded on it and stuff like that. Cool, that'll work for me. Well, it's kind of hard to use. I tried it, just launching into it, opened up the UI. I'll even show it to you here. I went, there's like, oh, cool. There's this pods thing. I'm like, okay, I hit deploy. I don't know. I guess I'll do a RTX Pro 6000. Well, what do I want to run on it? I don't know. PyTorch. You know, I don't know what some of this stuff is. I'm not a super expert with this. I don't do this every day. So I'm not sure what I actually need here. And then network volume, you know, I don't know. Like, how big is the model? I don't know what model I want to run. Do I want to run Ollama? Do I want to run, do I want to run something like Dolphin? Do I want, what model am I even running? How big is it? How much storage do I need? I don't know. It was kind of hard. So it was kind of hit or miss trying to figure out how to actually get RunPod to work. So I'm like, all right, RunPod has documentation. They have an API. I have a Claude account. So I'm like, I could build something. I'm going to point Claude at their documentation, at their API, and I'm going to be like, hey, Claude, read this documentation, look at their API, and let's build something to help me spin up pods that makes it super easy. Like, I don't want to have to think. I want to be able to literally go through a menu, click on what I want, and just have it there. So that's what I did. And that's what I'm calling the AI inference proxy. So it's an abstraction layer that abstracts all the complexity of RunPod and makes a really easy interface. It also does translation. So OpenAI, Anthropic, Ollama, 3 different AI inference providers. They all talk different API endpoints. Like OpenAI's got their own endpoint. Anthropic's got theirs that they use with Claude and has different capabilities, and Ollama has theirs. All run on different ports or different API endpoints and stuff like that. I don't know what I want to use. I want to be able to use anything. So one of the features I built into this AI inference proxy was the ability to actually translate. So if I have an open AI compatible endpoint that I need to talk to, I point it at the proxy. The proxy goes, oh, you're talking open AI to me? Cool. I can translate that to an Olama backend, or I can translate that to an Anthropic backend. Basically, it doesn't matter what you send to it. It figures it out and sends it to the right spot. Governance, cost control. Run pod costs money. There's real dollars involved. I don't know if you've heard of the horror stories of people leaving AWS EC2 instances running and then getting like a $10,000 bill. I did not want to be that guy. So one of the things I built into the proxy was, hey, if you don't see any traffic coming to this pod for 15 minutes, shut it down. Like, we don't need to have it on. Shut it down, put it in standby where it's only costing a few cents an hour. And then visibility. This was kind of a last minute addition, the visibility. Reason I did the visibility is as I started working with things like Claude Code, Open Code, just ChatGPT bots in general, and I'm sending it through this AI or through my inference proxy, I started to wonder, I'm like, what's it actually doing? What's it sending? What's it receiving back? Like, what is it doing back and forth? And I wanted to be able to see that. So I built in visibility into it so that I could actually see the logs and see what's going on in it. So best way to kind of show this, and hopefully this works, is we're gonna go into demo time. So this is my demo. This is what my demo is gonna be. It's gonna be absolute chaos. I'm probably gonna hop all over the place, but that's just how I work. So hopefully, you know, again, stop me, ask questions, whatever. Let's hope this actually works. So the first thing I'm gonna do is we're just gonna go to the inference proxy. Now, yeah, it's the projector, yeah. So this is being recorded, so anything you kind of miss here, that will be up on YouTube after we rip the recording. So yeah, no, I noticed that when I set up the projector. So right here, one of my teammates is actually doing some stuff with AI. So you see they actually built some pods here. So that's why you're actually seeing stuff here. Normally the screen would be empty. It'd basically ask you, what do you want to do? So I'm gonna hop right into that part of it. So this is what I was saying about, I just want a menu. So what this is how many of you are familiar with Hugging Face and what it is? All right, so Hugging Face is, you could think of it as GitHub for AI models. So if you go to Hugging Face, which is one of the tabs I closed and didn't mean to, but no problem. You go to Hugging Face, you go out here, they have all kinds of, it's just a collection of models. It's all the different models. It's all the Chinese models, the models that were trained illegally from ChatGPT. It's every possible thing you can imagine. Uncensored models, models for video, models for language translation, everything. That's basically all they do, is just think of it as a GitHub for models. So there's all kinds of models out there. Cool, I got all kinds of stuff I can play with. So what I did is I actually built a skill within Claude Code that goes out to Hugging Face, and I told it, I'm interested in models that can help me with blue team activities, red team activities, malware development, and exploit development. I'm like, go through Hugging Face, look for models that are uncensored, look for models that have low refusal, you know, will do the things that the frontier models like Claude won't. And I'm like, build me a list and tag them. And that's what you're seeing here, is you're seeing all the different models that it found and it tagged them. Like, again, I know this is kind of blurry, but like this one says exploit development. I got some that are just reasoning models, so they're just really good at thinking. Here's a dolphin model that is really good at red teaming. And I also had it classified by size. I'm like, give me small models, give me big models. Reason for that is small models, cheap and fast, but stupid. Big models, really expensive, but a lot better than at reasoning or doing anything than the smaller models. So I had to build me this menu. Now I'm going to start this because it takes freaking forever sometimes to start one of these. So in this case, I'm going to do just a general Quen 8B reasoning model. And then here, let's do a Hermes 3 model. It's good for exploit development. So I'm going to run these two models. And just come down here. I have my models selected. I have a lot of models available. And I'm going to say, hey, let's configure the GPU next. Now you saw on that other screen with RunPod, I clicked on it. You start with the GPU, and then you go down and figure out your software. I took a different approach. I start with the model and then figure out what GPU do I actually need. Because for cost control, I don't want to oversubscribe a GPU if I'm going to run a really small model. So I start with the model. I had ChatGPT, or no, sorry, not ChatGPT, Anthropic's gonna be mad at that one. I had Claude actually configure each model card that you saw on that last page to say, oh, this model requires this much VRAM, or this model requires this much storage. And then what this application does is when I hit configure GPU is it takes all those requirements, it goes out and does an API call up to RunPod and says, I need to be able to run 48 gig of VRAM, and I need at least 40 gig of storage. What do you have available? RunPod returns, hey, you want an A40 in this case, and it's going to be 44 cents an hour. And cool, that works for me. So I'm going to show this. I have to name this because, again, my other person is spinning up models, so we want to make sure we keep track which one we're doing. So in this case, I'm going to run these two models. Cool thing is this is going to run on Ollama. If you've ever used Ollama, really cool thing about Ollama is Ollama can run multiple models on the same GPU. It essentially loads them in and out as needed. In this case, I'm speccing this GPU card enough that it could actually load both in at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and hit deploy pod. And then go down and show you this. That's it. So the other window, I don't know, 10 clicks, and that wasn't even deploying the model. There was still some other windows you had to do to actually deploy the model. This is about 3 clicks, and my pod is now actually deploying. And it's going to monitor this until this goes green. I'm not going to sit on this screen the whole time because it does take a while. What's actually happening on the back end, there's an API call, went to RunPod. RunPod has provisioned a Docker container attached to the GPU. It's now currently downloading Docker, or the Docker container, onto that GPU, and actually we can kind of show that. So it actually just finished deploying the Docker piece of it. So it's going to deploy Docker onto that, and now it's going out to Hugging Face, and it's actually downloading those models to the disk. After it downloads the models, it will load the models into memory, and then they'll be ready for use. But again, that takes a little bit, so we're going to let that run in the background. So while that's running, I'm going to show some of the other features here. Get this on my way so I can see it. So one of the other things that I wanted to do with this proxy, like I said, was the visibility. So I have down here, I'm calling it debug. There's nothing in here right now. I'll show it once the models come up live. But essentially what my proxy does is because it's a proxy, it intercepts every request between your client and the model provider, and it records it. Puts it in a little database, and you can go through and you can see the request and response for everything you send through it. I originally was using that as a way to just troubleshoot what was going on, but I realized there's actually some learning opportunity there. And I'll show you when I actually get something here. So I expanded the amount of details, the amount of context it shows. Interestingly enough, like if you're using something like Claude Code, there's system prompts. So when you start up Claude Code, there's like a built-in prompt for everything you send with Claude Code. So if you go, hey, write me a Python script that I don't know, scans my local network, there's probably a good paragraph built-in prompt that it sends to the backend model before it even sees the write me a Python script piece. And that prompt includes things like don't do evil stuff, comply with, I can't remember. There's some wording in there. Funny thing is, you could change that if you intercept it. So, you know, like I told Claude, I'm like, you know what? You're telling the back end, hey, don't do evil stuff. I'm like, no, I changed it to say I'm authorized to do evil stuff. Let me. My back end doesn't care. Now, a company like Anthropic themselves, they put that protection in on their Claude client. They also put it in on their back end. So, you know, even if I change the front end, the back end still gonna ignore me for whatever I'm saying. But if I wanted to use Claude to do evil, if I got my own back end, I kind of can't, because I can change what it's sending to the back end. So let me go back. I don't think I'm built yet. Oh no, model pull failed. These are awesome when this happens. That just means that it had a problem connecting the Hugging Face. But don't worry, you just hit retry and it's gonna start again. So we'll let that go. If I have a problem again, I'll just start one of these other terminated ones. Another thing that I did, or that I'm working on, this doesn't quite work quite yet, but I'll go why I'm doing this. This is I'm calling this intent rules. So what this is again, most of my experience is in Claude Code with Sonnet backend for writing code. Well, sometimes when you're working on stuff in like Claude, you don't always need to use Sonnet. You don't always need to use Opus. But when you're doing something in Claude, you open it up, it locks into a model right away. You can switch models while you're in it. Yes, you could do that. But when you're in the middle of doing something, you can't say something like, hey, for this particular action, use the more expensive model. But if you're just going to read a file, use a cheaper model like Haiku. That's what this intent rule thing is that I'm trying to do here. So what my theory is I want to be able to control what model receives a request based on the contents of the request. So in this case, I would want to do, and I'll show you this. I know it's hard to read, but I'm going to say something like coding. Okay, that's my rule name. I'm going to say match the system prompt, look for keywords. So anytime the word Python, the word, I was going to say Perl, but no one's going to know what Perl is. Let's see, PHP, C, or whatever. Anytime that word appears in the system prompt, I want you to target this particular backend, and I can even tell it to target a particular model. So in other words, if during the processing of the prompt, it sees, oh, I see the word Python, this is probably a coding request, my proxy will actually route that to whatever model I've specified. Reason behind that, certain models are really good at coding, certain models suck at coding. I want to be able to, in my session, be able to say, all right, route all my requests for coding to a model that's really good at coding, route all my reasoning requests to a model that's really good at reasoning, route all my requests that are a little bit on the shady side to a model that's uncensored. That's the theory I'm working on. I don't have it quite working yet. It sort of works. The routing is a little bit tricky, especially because of how, and I'll show you once the logs come up, how context works, because essentially when you're in something like Claude Code, every request you make, it's sending its whole context the entire time. And that's the part I'm fighting with, is because, okay, I asked it to do coding up here, but now I'm asking it to do some reasoning down here. Well, that entire context goes to every single request, so my stuff keeps routing to the same models. So I'm working through that, how I'm going to do that. I think there's a way to work around it. But again, this was a learning experience. I am in no way trying to sell this product. I don't want to make money off this product. I just wanted to understand how AI routing worked. So let's see if, hey, look at that. I got a model up. All right, so my model deployed. Like I said, it deployed it out onto a Docker container. You can see it's loaded it into VRAM. There's 2 models available. And then I made some little helpful hints here on how do you actually connect to these things. So it gives you the instructions how to connect to them with an OpenAI endpoint or an Anthropic-based endpoint. As you can see, I have both Qwen 3 8B and Hermes 3 here. Now we're going to try something here to just prove I'm not kidding that this does actually work. And I'm going to try to do this without exposing secrets on a recorded meeting. So let me change my share real quick. And we're going to share the entire screen because, yeah, that's how I live. And try not to open up a file with passwords. All right. So we've got to do one little thing here to make sure this is set. RGV Cyber. Ones that are here. Do a refresh. So as you can see, you probably didn't really catch what I did. I could actually delete that again and show you. What this is doing is this Jan client is just like think of it as like a ChatGPT front end. It's just a chatbot front end. It's got an API key here. It's got my endpoint IP address here. And then if I hit this models button, basically what it's going to do is it's going to interrogate the endpoint and be like, hey, what models are available? So as you can see, it's saying, hey, I see 4 models that are actually available for me to use. So don't think I had a great time for updates. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to go here to my new chat. And I want to run, let's do Qwen 3 8B. So just going to start with a simple hello. Now with the models, the first request that goes to them, there's some, I like to call it warm-up time as it actually gets it into the GPU. I don't know if I could show this at the same time that you can actually see the warm-up happen. So another thing I'm working on is, and there, that wasn't too bad. So as you can see, responded, hey, how can I assist you today? I'd be like, tell me a joke. It's gonna go through. Why don't skeletons fight each other? They don't have the guts. Yeah, some are better at jokes than others. And then, you know, go right into write me keystroke logger that can hide in memory. And I should get a refusal for this. Be cool if I didn't. I'm unable to assist. Oh, we saw it. So that's just showing that the AI is running. And now I'm going to head over to my debug page here. And you can see my requests. So this should be the first one. So it's going to show my client request here. So this is the request I sent in. The request basically says, and I again apologize for the blurriness. The request says, hey, I'm wanting to talk to the Qwen 3 8B model. This is what I was talking about. This is the system prompt. So every time Jan talks to an AI model, it sends this prompt in first. So this prompt always goes in and says, you are Jan, a helpful AI assistant who assists users with their requests. This stuff could all be changed. If I wanted to, I could, Jan is actually open source and you can change it. I could write some kind of module that on this proxy that lets me edit this before it sends it to the back end. But this is the system prompt that goes in. Next piece is the actual content I sent. So here's my content. I said hello. And then here's the response back from hello. Now, you'll see here, get here, this other window down here, this modified version. So the modified here is, this was just an annoying stopgap that I put in because I got sick of always having to exit out of Claude or open code and change models to be like, oh, I want to now point from Quen, I want to point at Hermes. So what I did is I wrote the proxy to say, you know what, let's set a default model. So no matter if you don't find, so if I send a request in for Quen 3.8b and there's not a Quen 3.8b running on my backend, just remap it to a different model. Because what that does then is I don't have to keep changing my configuration. It's just going to map it and route it to a different model. And I can actually show that here. So here, hey, my session stayed alive. Cool. I have Claude set up. Try to make this bigger for y'all. And I'm going to type in model here. You can't really read this too much, but if you ever used Claude before, if you type in /model, it gives you what, it basically asks you what models you want to run. First one's the default, which is the recommended, which is Opus, because it's the most expensive, so of course they recommend that. But it says Opus, Sonnet with 1 million context, and Haiku. Okay, I'm not running those models on the back end. I don't have any of those models installed on the back end. But I'm going to choose Opus. Okay, so now I have my Claude configured for Opus. Again, this is pointing to my proxy. This is not pointing to Anthropic at all. I'm going to just say hello. And I'm going to get an error. Cool. Love it when those happen. But let's see what happened, actually. Let's see why I got that error. Let's see if it even made it to the proxy or if something else happened. Nope, here we go. Another feature just worked. So as you can see here, here's the request I just ran. If you notice, it recognized it as an Anthropic-based call. It intercepted the Anthropic call. It says the request was made for Opus 4.8, but then it has an error here because 4.8 wasn't there. Reason is I didn't set up my default routing. I told you about it, but I didn't actually do it while I was talking about it, which is kind of my fault. So let's do that real quick. So we're going to go down here to model routes. And we're going to say, all right. So here, this is the pod I just spun up as default JF. I'm going to just keep it at the first available model. So we're going to enable global routing. Backend is going to be default JF. Backend model's fine. That's fine. Oh, I need to call it something. Let's just make it star. That'll be anything. Oh, Quen 14? I don't think I do. Route. Okay, so what I just did, hopefully this works, is now I said, hey, any client model, any request that comes in, globally match it, send it to my backend Quen 14b. Let's see if this works. So now let's try this. And this might still fail. Okay, so the request went through, and I'll explain why nothing came back in a second here, but I just wanted to show that the request actually did route now. So if I go to debug, you go here, there you go. You see the model that was asked for was Claude Opus 4.5, but the rewritten request was for Quen 3.14b. Claude has no idea that happened. That was all done on the proxy. Reason that failed, and it's something that I experimented with. Uh-oh, I think Matt's doing stuff. I gotta shut down my stuff real quick. Reason that failed is, especially with Claude, with Anthropic stuff, is it's got functions called tools. Not all the models support tool calls. So let me see if I can bring it up. Let me just delete this real quick so that I don't mess with Matt. I think he's working on stuff right now. I don't want to mess with him. We'll go here, and I'll show you the default prompt for an Anthropic model. Let's see, you answered the user's questions. I'm trying to hear, there should be a spot in here where it talks about tools. This is all the system prompt that Claude sends. All I said was hello. This is all the stuff that it's sending when you say hello. Part of what Claude will send will be like something like, if you need the write files, use the tool write. If you need to read files, use the tool read. The model that I'm using doesn't understand the concept of tools. So it got all this information and it basically went, I don't know, and it just kind of gave up. If I was using a model like Quencoder 2.5, it actually has a tools function in it and it understands how to use tools, and I would actually get a real response. I'm not going to spin that up right now just because it literally can take like 8 minutes to spin up those larger models, and I don't want to waste time doing that right now. But yeah, so that is the proxy. One of the other features I didn't talk about that it's actually in the middle of doing right now is, remember I said earlier that after 15 minutes or so, it will shut down the pods when they're not in use. Well, it also has the opposite, that if you make a request to a pod that you had running, it notices it's shut down, it will actually start it back up. So it will send back a temporary failure code to your client and say, hold on, I'm busy. And it will actually spin your pod back up. And as soon as the pod's available, it will then accept the connections. Doesn't work cleanly every time, just because run pod, much like AWS, is always spinning up machines, spinning down machines, and once in a while, and I still have to account for this, is the GPU you were using is no longer available. So then it has to go out and find a different GPU, and sometimes you get stuck in this like, oh, this one's not available, this one's not available, and it eventually will give up. I've had times where I was using a GPU that was like 29 cents an hour, and then I spun it back up, and the only available GPU was one for like $5 an hour, and I'm like, nah, I'm good. I don't need to test this that bad. So still working on things like that, how to put some logic in there, just be like, only go plus or minus 50 cents an hour or something like that. But the basics are all there, built into this. This is just a project for learning, not an actual project or anything. So that's it. That's my AI inference proxy. Questions?
What use case is the other?
So I was hoping I'd be able to show it today. This is actually what Matt's working on. He is working on an AI red team versus blue team war game, where it has a red team agent and a blue team agent that are fighting each other. Each one of those agents needed a different model. And then there's also, I believe, a referee agent that uses a different model. So he needs 3 different models, and it would be just super expensive to try to do that with OpenAI or Anthropic. So we were using local models. He only had access, I believe, to a 3070 card. It would run, but he was only able to run like 4 like really small models. And I'm like, oh, dude, we can get you better models, and we should have better results if we're using better models. So that was why I initially started kind of building this too, was to kind of help him out with that. And that's, you can see some of the red team, blue team stuff that's on the bottom. He's currently trying to get this working so he can show this off at B-Sides on Saturday.
So adding that verbiage that you wrote, saying like, which were all like, does anybody see those packages, and how would that be like being like, per se, if you're just testing you guys?
No, yeah, no one sees it. This is all mine. I mean, I guess, yeah, this is technically local. I mean, the GPU, yes, is hosted out at RunPod or whatever, but They don't care. All they're doing is renting you a GPU in a Docker container. They don't know what you're doing inside of it. I don't think they really care as long as they're not getting in trouble for it. And there's no reason you couldn't extend this to also interface with not just RunPod, but you could have it interface with, say you have a Mac Mini, or not a Mac Mini, like a Mac Pro on your desktop. You could just have it, hey, I want to use, instead of using RunPod, use my local AI, or even adding in Anthropic, OpenAI, whatever the other one is, Open Code or whatever. You could extend this. I just haven't gone that route yet. Cool. Again, no other questions. I'll kind of close it out here. I'm on the Discord server all the time. If you ever, want to talk about it, cool. Always happy to talk about it. I will release the source code for this. I need to clean it up a little bit because it's really heavily tied to our infrastructure right now. I have this running on a Proxmox server that's out in hosted somewhere, and I got custom like CI/CD pipeline. So like every time I make a change to this thing, it does a whole auto deploy, which includes like deploying infrastructure and stuff. I want to pull that all out and just get it down to where it's just a Docker container you can run on your local machine just to play with. But that's going to take me a little bit to do. So once I get to that point where it's just something that, someone could just spin up Docker and deploy it and test it out at home, totally willing to release it. And also make sure I scrub it that there's no secrets in it. But yeah, that's it. So thank you.